The Cleveland Municipal Courthouse stood like a granite sentinel, its imposing columns casting long shadows across the weathered steps. Morning light filtered through high windows, catching dust motes that danced around the worn wooden benches and scuffed linoleum floors. This was a place where countless stories intersected, of hope, despair, justice, and judgment. Judge Robert Hartley arrived precisely at 7:45 a.m., his routine as predictable as the courthouse clock. Third-generation judicial royalty, he carried the weight of family legacy in every measured step. His tailored charcoal suit spoke of old money, of generations of legal prominence in Cleveland's most respected circles. The gold cufflinks, a gift from his father on his first judicial appointment, clinked softly against his briefcase. Amara Richardson's morning had begun hours earlier. At 4:30 a.m., she'd already prepared lunches for her children, reviewed important board documents, and driven her teenage daughter, Zara, to her early college prep program. Her navy blazer, carefully pressed the night before, showed slight signs of wear, a testament to the multiple roles she juggled daily. The traffic violation that brought her to court was almost laughable in its triviality. A momentary distraction while navigating through a construction zone, a split-second lane change that technically crossed a solid line. But for Amara, every interaction with the legal system felt loaded with potential danger, a high-stakes game where the rules seemed perpetually tilted. As she entered the courtroom, the ambient noise seemed to quiet. Amara was used to commanding spaces, in boardrooms, at economic summits, in community meetings. But here, in this court, she felt the familiar weight of being judged before a word was spoken. Her son, Marcus, sat quietly in the back row, his eyes darting between his mother and the imposing figure of Judge Hartley. Marcus was 12, old enough to understand the subtle dynamics of race and power, young enough to still believe in the fundamental fairness of institutions. He'd watched his mother navigate countless challenges, had seen her transform professional setbacks into opportunities. The hand-drawn note in his pocket, "You're my hero, Mom," felt like a talisman of protection. Judge Hartley reviewed the case file with the same clinical detachment he applied to everything. Decades of judicial experience had taught him to see cases as mathematical equations. Inputs, violations, consequences. He didn't see people, he saw patterns, infractions, statistical probabilities. "Ms. Richardson," his voice boomed, cutting through the ambient courthouse murmurs. "You're charged with improper lane change in a construction zone. How do you plead?" Amara's response was measured, professional. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The circumstances were complex, and I believe the citation was issued without full context. What followed was less a judicial proceeding and more a performance of power. Judge Hartley seemed to hear her words but not listen to their substance. The fine he proposed was significantly higher than standard for such a minor infraction, a difference that would be financially challenging for many, but which struck Amara as particularly punitive. Marcus watched his mother's hands, always her tell. When truly frustrated, her fingers would subtly tap a rhythm learned from years of professional composure. Today, they remained perfectly still, a masterclass in controlled emotion. "The fine will be $750, Hartley declared, his gavel falling with a sharp crack that seemed to echo the finality of his judgment. In that moment, a universe of unspoken tensions hung in the air. Amara's professional achievements, her community leadership, the countless lives she'd impacted, none of these seemed to matter. She was reduced to a single moment, a technical violation, a statistic. Marcus saw something shift in his mother's eyes, not defeat, but a quiet, burning determination. This was not an ending, but a beginning. Outside the courthouse, Cleveland continued its morning rhythm, traffic flowing, people rushing, the city breathing its complex, multi-layered life. Inside, a moment of judicial interaction had just planted seeds of a story that would soon grow far beyond this small courtroom. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the narrative? The research began meticulously, almost like a scientific expedition into the heart of systemic inequality. Amara's home office transformed into a command center of quiet rebellion. Multiple monitors displayed spreadsheets, court records, and demographic data that most people would find overwhelming. To her, it was a living, breathing map of injustice. Her first step was comprehensive documentation. She wasn't just collecting her own story, but creating a mosaic of experiences that revealed deeper patterns. Each court record, each fine, each seemingly insignificant interaction became a piece of a larger puzzle. Marcus noticed the change first. Late one night, he found his mother surrounded by documents, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose, a pot of coffee growing cold beside her. "Mom," he whispered, "aren't you tired?" Amara looked up, her eyes reflecting a combination of determination and academic precision. Understanding isn't about convenience, Marcus. It's about commitment. Her methodology was brilliant in its simplicity. She reached out to her extensive network, community leaders, legal aid workers, social justice advocates, creating a confidential reporting system. A digital platform where individuals could anonymously share their experiences with judicial interactions, traffic violations, and seemingly minor legal encounters. The data began to tell a story far more complex than any single incident. Within weeks, patterns emerged that were impossible to ignore. Traffic violations in predominantly black neighborhoods carried significantly higher fine rates. The financial burden disproportionately affected working-class families, creating a cycle of economic strain that few outside those communities could comprehend. Zara became an unexpected ally. Her high school's social justice club became a subtle recruitment ground for gathering additional stories. Young activists, armed with digital literacy and a passion for change, began documenting experiences their parents and grandparents had long silenced. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a sociological researcher at Cleveland State University, became intrigued by Amara's emerging dataset. "This is more than anecdotal evidence," she told Amara during a late-night video call. "This could be groundbreaking research." The Economic Opportunity Collective, Amara's organization, began allocating resources toward this silent investigation. It wasn't just about one traffic ticket anymore. It was about understanding the economic mechanisms of systemic inequality. Her approach was deliberate. No public outrage, no inflammatory statements, just cold, hard data that would speak louder than any emotional appeal. Behind the scenes, legal contacts were quietly activated. Michael Chen, a civil rights attorney who had worked with Amara on previous community projects, began reviewing the compiled information. "We're building a case," he told her, "not just for litigation, but for systemic reform." The personal cost was significant. Sleepless nights became the norm. Family dinners were punctuated by discussions of data points and social strategies. Marcus and Zara were being educated in a masterclass of social change that went far beyond traditional classroom learning. Thanksgiving dinner that year was particularly telling. Extended family gathered, and while conversations flowed around traditional topics, Amara's silent resilience was palpable. Her mother, Gloria, a retired school principal who had fought her own battles against institutional racism, understood best. "You're building something they can't ignore," Gloria whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. The digital platform grew. What started as a personal project became a community resource. Lawyers, researchers, community activists began to take notice. The data was robust, the methodology impeccable. By the end of 3 months, Amara had transformed a single traffic ticket into a comprehensive study of judicial interactions. Each spreadsheet, each carefully documented story was a quiet act of resistance. Judge Hartley remained unaware. The machinery of change was moving, not with a roar, but with the precision of a well-oiled mechanism. Amara Richardson was playing a long game, and she was just getting started. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the narrative? The Cleveland Economic Empowerment Summit was more than just another conference. It was a gathering of the city's most influential minds, where billions in economic development were discussed, debated, and decided. The convention center gleamed with modern architecture, its glass walls reflecting the early morning light, Executives from Fortune 500 companies mingled with local entrepreneurs, a complex ecosystem of ambition and opportunity. Judge Robert Hartley arrived precisely at 8:15 a.m., invited as a keynote speaker on judicial perspectives in economic development. His reputation preceded him, a jurist known for his stringent approach, respected by some, feared by many. Backstage, Amara Richardson completed her final presentation preparations. Her team from the Economic Opportunity Collective moved with a synchronized efficiency that spoke of countless successful projects. The presentation slides represented years of work, innovative economic models that had transformed struggling neighborhoods into vibrant economic zones. What none of the attendees knew was the intricate dance about to unfold. The morning's first panel was a masterclass in economic strategy. Representatives from tech giants, financial institutions, and community development organizations shared their insights. But when Amara took the stage, the room's energy shifted perceptibly. Her presentation was a revelation. Data-driven, emotionally intelligent, she broke down complex economic barriers with a clarity that left the audience spellbound. She spoke of systemic challenges not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for strategic intervention. Judge Hartley watched from the side of the stage, his professional facade slowly crumbling. The woman he had casually fined months ago was now dismantling economic theories with surgical precision. Each slide was a testament to her intellectual prowess, showing how targeted investments could transform entire communities. The numbers were staggering. The Economic Opportunity Collective had secured over $50 million in community development grants. Their innovative approach had created jobs, revitalized neighborhoods, and challenged traditional economic development models. During the tea and a session, Hartley found himself raising his hand. The room went silent. Ms. Richardson, his voice carried a complexity of emotion, part professional curiosity, part something deeper. Your model suggests that traditional judicial approaches may be hindering economic growth. Could you elaborate? Amara's response was measured, professional, but laden with subtle power. Your Honor, every fine, every legal interaction is more than a punitive measure. It's an economic intervention that can either support or suppress community potential. The subtext was clear. She was talking about him, about that traffic ticket, about systemic approaches that marginalized communities through seemingly minor interactions. Colleagues exchanged knowing glances. Michael Chen, the civil rights attorney, watched with a slight smile. This was strategy in its most elegant form. During the lunch break, unexpected connections formed. Executives who had previously viewed community development as a charitable afterthought now saw it as a critical business strategy. Amara had transformed the conversation entirely. Backstage, a moment of private tension emerged. Judge Hartley approached Amara, the weight of their previous encounter hanging between them. Impressive presentation, he offered, his professional veneer slightly cracked. Amara's response was pure diplomacy. Thank you. Data has a way of telling stories that individual perspectives might miss. It wasn't an accusation, it was an invitation to understanding. The day concluded with Hartley's keynote address, but something had changed. His prepared remarks now seemed outdated, disconnected from the transformative narrative Amara had presented. In the convention center's bustling hallways, a quiet revolution was taking shape. One traffic ticket, one judicial interaction, an entire system of understanding was being reimagined. As evening descended on Cleveland, the seeds of change had been planted, and Amara Richardson was just getting started. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the narrative? The aftermath of the economic summit sent ripples through Cleveland's professional landscape. Amara Richardson's presentation had been more than a mere speech. It was a strategic masterpiece that dismantled traditional economic narratives. Her office at the Economic Opportunity Collective became a war room of sorts. Researchers, data analysts, and community liaisons worked with unprecedented intensity. The summit had opened doors that had previously seemed impenetrable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived with a thick portfolio of compiled research. Your data, she said, spreading documents across the conference table, is rewriting our understanding of urban economic development. The numbers were revolutionary. The collective had developed a unique economic model that demonstrated how targeted investments could transform communities. They weren't just providing financial support, they were creating entire ecosystems of opportunity. In one neighborhood alone, their approach had reduced unemployment by 22% in just 3 years. Small businesses were sprouting, educational opportunities were expanding, and generational poverty was being systematically challenged. Zara, now deeply involved in her mother's work, began digitizing decades of community economic data. Her teenage perspective brought a digital native's approach to complex research. "Mom," she said one evening, "these patterns are like mathematical poetry." Marcus, too, was finding his place. His passion for social justice was taking shape through technology. He was developing a mobile application that would help community members understand their economic rights, track local investments, and connect with resources. The family's dinner conversations had transformed. No longer just discussions, they were strategic planning sessions. Gloria, Amara's mother, would often share stories of civil rights struggles, providing historical context to their current work. "We're fighting the same battle," Gloria would say, "just with different weapons." Behind the scenes, the legal documentation of systemic inequities continued. The platform Amara had created was now a comprehensive database of judicial interactions. Law schools were beginning to take notice, with several requesting access to the research. Judge Hartley found himself in an unexpected position. The Economic Summit had exposed him to a perspective he had never considered. His own judicial decisions were being viewed through a lens of economic impact he had previously ignored. Colleagues noticed the change. His court proceedings began to reflect a more nuanced approach. Fines were no longer just punitive measures, but considered within a broader context of economic opportunity. The most profound revelations came from unexpected sources. A forensic economic analysis revealed that the traffic ticket system was generating significant revenue from communities least able to bear the financial burden. What seemed like minor infractions were actually part of a larger economic mechanism of systemic oppression. Amara's network expanded. Philanthropic organizations, tech entrepreneurs, and progressive judicial reformers began reaching out. Her approach wasn't about confrontation, it was about systematic, data-driven transformation. A breakthrough came when a major tech foundation expressed interest in scaling her economic model. The potential impact was exponential, not just in Cleveland, but potentially across multiple urban centers. The personal cost was significant. Sleepless nights, constant strategizing, balancing professional demands with family responsibilities. But for Amara, this was more than a career. It was a calling. During a late-night strategy session, Michael Chen, the civil rights attorney, presented a comprehensive legal strategy. "We're not just fighting individual cases," he explained. "We're challenging the entire system's foundation." Marcus, overhearing the conversation, understood the profound nature of their work. This wasn't just about one traffic ticket or one judicial interaction. This was about reimagining justice itself. As Cleveland slept, the Richardson family continued their quiet revolution. Data compiled, strategies developed, a new understanding of economic justice taking shape. The traffic ticket that started it all now seemed like a distant memory. Something much larger was emerging. A comprehensive approach to understanding how seemingly minor interactions could shape entire communities' futures. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the narrative? The Cleveland Judicial Center buzzed with an unusual energy. Rumors had spread about the Economic Summit presentation, about a woman who had quietly dismantled years of systemic assumptions with nothing more than data and determination. Judge Robert Hartley's chambers became a place of unexpected reflection. The walls lined with family portraits, generations of judicial figures, now seemed to watch him with a different kind of scrutiny. His father's stern portrait seemed to challenge him. What have you truly understood about justice? Amara's invitation came unexpectedly, not a formal request, but a strategic meeting proposal that landed on his desk with surgical precision. A conversation about systemic approach to municipal interactions. The email read, signed simply with her name and professional credentials. The meeting place was carefully chosen, a neutral conference room in the judicial complex, a space where power dynamics could be temporarily suspended. When Amara entered, the room seemed to recalibrate. Her navy blazer was impeccable, her posture a perfect balance of professional confidence and measured approach. Judge Hartley found himself sitting slightly straighter, an unconscious response to her presence. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm and deliberate, "we need to discuss something more significant than a traffic ticket." What followed was not an accusation, but a masterclass in strategic dialogue. Amara laid out her research, not as an attack, but as an invitation to understanding. Each data point was a precise instrument, surgically exposing the unintended consequences of judicial practices. "Do you realize," she explained, spreading out carefully prepared documents, "that traffic fines in predominantly black neighborhoods are 47% higher than in white neighborhoods for identical infractions?" Hartley's initial defensiveness began to crack. This wasn't an emotional argument. This was cold, hard evidence. Marcus and Zara, who had been preparing their mother's documentation, had created a digital presentation that now seemed to breathe with its own life. Graphs, statistical analyses, personal narratives, a comprehensive view of systemic inequality. "I wasn't just fighting a ticket," Amara explained. "I was documenting a system." The confrontation was unlike any legal interaction Hartley had experienced. No anger, no accusations, just a precise deconstruction of judicial practices that had remained unquestioned for generations. Her personal story emerged as a powerful narrative. Growing up in Cleveland's challenging neighborhoods, watching her grandparents navigate a system designed to limit their opportunities. Each academic achievement, each professional milestone was a quiet rebellion against systemic barriers. Hartley found himself listening, truly listening, perhaps for the first time. The Economic Opportunity Collective's work was more than a professional achievement. It was a comprehensive approach to dismantling systemic barriers. Job training programs, educational initiatives, economic development strategies, a holistic view of community transformation. "Your judicial decisions," Amara explained, "are economic interventions. Every fine, every ruling has a ripple effect far beyond the courtroom." Moments of vulnerability emerged. Hartley spoke about his own family's judicial legacy, the expectations, the unquestioned traditions. Amara listened with the same professional courtesy she had maintained throughout their interaction. It wasn't an apology she sought, it was understanding. The conversation lasted hours. Coffee went cold. Daylight shifted. Two professionals from seemingly different worlds found unexpected common ground, a genuine commitment to justice. As they concluded, something fundamental had changed, not just between them, but in the very fabric of their understanding. "This isn't about winning," Amara said in closing. "This is about understanding." Hartley's response was unexpected. "Show me how we can do better." Outside the conference room, Cleveland continued its daily rhythm. But inside, a quiet revolution had just taken place. The traffic ticket that started everything was now just a footnote in a much larger story of transformation. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the narrative? The transformation began quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. Judge Hartley's court became a laboratory of judicial innovation, guided by the insights Amara had meticulously presented. New protocols emerged. Each case now underwent a comprehensive review that considered not just the legal infraction, but its potential economic and social impact. Traffic violations were no longer seen as simple punitive measures, but as opportunities for community intervention. A pilot program took shape. Instead of automatic fines, first-time offenders could now choose between traditional penalties and community engagement programs. Job skills training, financial literacy workshops, educational support, alternatives that addressed root causes rather than merely punishing symptoms. Michael Chen, the civil rights attorney, worked closely with Hartley to draft these new approaches. "We're reimagining justice," he told colleagues, "not as punishment, but as opportunity." Amara's role was strategic and nuanced. She wasn't seeking revenge, but systemic transformation. The Economic Opportunity Collective began providing technical support, helping design programs that could genuinely lift communities. Zara documented everything. Her teenage perspective brought a digital native's approach to capturing the emerging model. Social media became a platform for sharing these innovative judicial approaches, creating transparency and generating broader conversations. Marcus developed a mobile application that helped individuals understand their rights, track judicial interactions, and access community resources. What had started as a family project was becoming a powerful tool for social change. The judicial training programs Hartley initiated were revolutionary. Young lawyers and judicial clerks were now taught to see beyond the letter of the law to understand its human impact. Case studies included Amara's research, transforming theoretical discussions into practical understanding. Gloria, Amara's mother, became an unexpected mentor to this process. Her decades of experience in education and community organizing provided crucial historical context. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she would remind the team, "but it happens through persistent, thoughtful intervention." Unexpected allies emerged. Progressive judges from other districts began reaching out, wanting to understand and potentially replicate the model. Law schools started incorporating the new approach into their curriculum. The financial implications were profound. By reducing recurring legal interactions and providing genuine support, the system began to save money. Fewer repeat offenses, more productive community members, a more integrated approach to social justice. Hartley's personal transformation was equally significant. He began speaking at conferences, sharing the journey of understanding systemic bias. His speeches were raw, honest, a judicial veteran admitting and addressing his previous limitations. "I thought I was dispensing justice," he would say, "but I was often perpetuating a system that created more problems than it solved." The Economic Opportunity Collective expanded its reach. The model developed in Cleveland began attracting national attention. Philanthropic organizations, tech entrepreneurs, and social justice advocates saw the potential for widespread implementation. Family dinners became strategy sessions. The Richardsons weren't just participating in change, they were architecting it. Each member brought a unique perspective. Amara's strategic vision, Gloria's historical wisdom, Zara's technological innovation, Marcus's community-focused approach. A breakthrough came when a major national foundation expressed interest in scaling the model. The potential impact was exponential, not just in judicial reform, but in comprehensive community development. The traffic ticket that had started everything now seemed like a distant memory. What had emerged was a comprehensive approach to understanding how institutional interactions could either suppress or elevate community potential. Hartley and Amara's relationship transformed from an adversarial encounter to a collaborative partnership. They co-authored academic papers, spoke at conferences, demonstrating how personal understanding could drive systemic change. As Cleveland watched, a quiet revolution was taking place, not through conflict, but through genuine dialogue, not through punishment, but through opportunity. The scales of justice were being rebalanced, one interaction at a time. Would you like me to continue with the final part of the narrative? 10 years had passed since that fateful traffic ticket. The Cleveland courthouse now stood as a testament to transformative justice, a living monument to what could happen when systemic barriers were genuinely challenged. Zara Richardson stood at the podium, delivering her first major address as a civil rights attorney. At 28, she embodied the change her family had worked generations to create. Behind her, a wall of data visualizations told a story of remarkable transformation, reduced recidivism rates, improved community economic indicators, a judicial system that had fundamentally reimagined its purpose. Judge Hartley, now retired, sat in the front row. His once rigid posture had softened, replaced by a quiet dignity that spoke of hard-earned wisdom. The man who had once casually issued a harsh fine now understood the profound responsibility of judicial power. Marcus had transformed his initial mobile application into a comprehensive platform for legal advocacy. The technology now helped thousands of individuals navigate complex legal systems, providing resources, guidance, and hope. Amara, watching from the wings, felt a complexity of emotions. This wasn't just a professional achievement. This was a family legacy of resistance, understanding, and genuine social transformation. The national impact was profound. What had started as a local initiative in Cleveland had sparked similar approaches in judicial systems across the country. Law schools now taught the Richardson-Hartley model as a case study in systemic change. Gloria, now in her late 70s, represented the historical bridge. Her stories of civil rights struggles now sat alongside her children's and grandchildren's achievements, a continuous narrative of progress. The Economic Opportunity Collective had grown into a national organization. Its approach had been adopted by governments, educational institutions, and community development agencies. What once seemed radical was now becoming standard practice. A documentary team was capturing the story. From Ticket to Transformation, explored how a single judicial interaction could become a catalyst for comprehensive social change. Interviews revealed the human stories behind the data, individuals whose lives have been fundamentally altered by this new approach. During a break in the filming, Zara found a moment with her mother. "Did you ever imagine it would become this?" she asked. Amara's smile was knowing. Change is never about a single moment. It's about persistent, strategic intervention. The Richardson family gathered for a private celebration. It wasn't just about professional achievements, but about a shared commitment to social justice. Each family member had found their unique way of contributing to the larger vision. Judge Hartley had become an unexpected ally. His late-career transformation had become a powerful narrative of personal growth. He now lectured at law schools, sharing the importance of empathy and systemic understanding in judicial practice. The original traffic ticket, now framed in Amara's office, remained a powerful symbol, a reminder that systemic change often begins with the most unexpected moments. National recognition followed, prestigious awards, academic honors, but these seemed secondary to the real achievement, tangible improvement in people's lives. Marcus unveiled the latest version of his advocacy platform. Machine learning algorithms now helped predict and prevent systemic judicial biases, turning technology into a tool for social justice. A new generation of judicial professionals emerged, trained in a model that prioritized understanding over punishment. They saw their role not as enforcers, but as community support mechanisms. During the documentary's final interview, Amara reflected on the journey. "Justice isn't about punishment," she said. "It's about creating opportunities for human potential to flourish." The Cleveland skyline, visible through the window, seemed to reflect this transformation. A city reimagining itself, one interaction at a time. As evening descended, the Richardson family gathered. 3 generations united by a common purpose, proving that change is possible, that understanding can triumph over systemic limitations. A traffic ticket had become a movement. A moment of apparent injustice had transformed into a blueprint for a more equitable future. The scales of justice had been rebalanced. Would you like me to elaborate on any part of this final narrative? The drive home from the courthouse was a silent symphony of emotions. Marcus watched his mother's reflection in the car window, her profile etched with a concentration that betrayed nothing of the morning's frustration. Amara Richardson was a master of composure, a skill honed through years of navigating professional landscapes where the margins for error were razor-thin. Her story wasn't just about a traffic ticket. It was a narrative of generational struggle and unprecedented triumph. Growing up in Cleveland's Glendale neighborhood, Amara had witnessed her grandparents' stories of economic hardship and racial barriers. Her grandmother, Eleanor, had worked as a domestic worker, cleaning homes of wealthy white families while dreaming of opportunities for her children and grandchildren. Her grandfather, Robert, a Korean War veteran, had fought battles on two fronts, one abroad and another at home, challenging systemic racism that denied him the same opportunities afforded to white veterans. These stories weren't just family history. They were blueprints of resilience. Amara's path to success was anything but traditional. She put herself through night school while working multiple jobs, raising her children virtually single-handedly after a difficult divorce. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly. A small business consulting project that revealed her extraordinary talent for economic strategy. Within 5 years, she transformed that initial project into a consulting firm that specialized in economic development for marginalized communities. The Economic Opportunity Collective, her brainchild, had become a powerhouse of innovation, securing millions in grants and investments for communities often overlooked by traditional financial institutions. Her current position as board chairperson wasn't just a job, it was a mission. At home, the aftermath of the court encounter unfolded with careful deliberation. Zara, her teenage daughter, was the first to break the silence. "Mom, are you going to do something about that judge?" The question carried more than teenage indignation. It held a genuine curiosity about her mother's strategy. Amara's smile was enigmatic. Not everything is solved through immediate confrontation, sweetheart. Sometimes the most powerful response is strategic patience. Marcus, typically quiet, surprised them both. "But it's not fair," he said, his voice a mixture of adolescent anger and emerging understanding. Fairness, Amara explained, isn't always about immediate justice. It's about persistent, systematic change. That evening, while her children did homework, Amara began her own work. Her laptop opened to a comprehensive database, not just of her current economic development projects, but of systemic legal interactions. She wasn't just collecting data, she was building a narrative. Each interaction with the judicial system, each fine, each seemingly minor infraction, they were more than isolated incidents. They were part of a larger pattern that required careful, methodical documentation. Her network was extensive and powerful. Colleagues from various sectors, legal experts, community leaders, business innovators, began receiving subtle, carefully crafted emails. Not complaints, but invitations to dialogue, to understand. The fine itself was significant. $750 was no small amount. But for Amara, it represented something more. It was a symbol of the countless small financial burdens placed on communities of color, a death by 1,000 cuts that maintained economic disparities. Her phone rang. It was Dr. Evelyn Martinez, a longtime colleague from the Urban Policy Research Institute. "I heard about this morning," Martinez said, her voice a blend of concern and strategic curiosity. "Not now," Amara responded, "but soon." The children understood, without fully comprehending, that something was brewing. Their mother wasn't just a professional. She was a strategist, a change architect who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. As night fell over Cleveland, the Richardson household was quiet. But underneath that calm, plans were forming, not of revenge, but of transformation. The traffic ticket was just the beginning of a much larger story. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the narrative?